You built your business with systems that worked. Until they didn't. Maybe your onboarding process takes longer than it should, or your content strategy feels like a disorganized mess. The truth is, what got you here won't get you to the next level. And waiting until things completely break down, that's a huge time waster. In this episode, I'm sharing how I fell into this trap with my own podcast workflow, how I knew it was time to make a change, and the hidden cost of outdated systems that so many business owners overlook. If you feel like you're constantly fixing problems instead of making progress, I want you to dive in. This episode is for you. Let's do it. Are you that driven entrepreneur who believes that working harder holds the key to your dreams? Are you drowning in the day-to-day tasks, wishing you had more time to strategize and cast the vision for your business growth? Hi, I'm Donna Dubé, your guide on this entrepreneurial journey. I've walked in your worn-out shoes, burning the midnight oil, convinced that sheer hard work was the secret to success. Just one more email, one more task, until I found myself on a one-way track to burnout. But here's the twist in the tale. I discovered that success isn't just about working harder, it's about working smarter. It's about being intentional with our time. It's about steering our ship with focus, because no team, system, or automation can outperform a lack of direction. In this podcast, I'm sharing with you all the strategies for business growth that it took me years to learn. If you're ready to step out of the daily overwhelm so you can amplify your profits, then I'm ready to teach you. I believe the only limit to your business growth is the one you set for yourself. Go grab a notebook, warm up that cup of tea, and let's do this. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited for this episode because I feel this is a trap that so many business owners get stuck in, and I myself just recently did. And so being able to share what happened in my business and a little bit behind the scenes is really something I'm looking forward to. So I hope you stick with it, and I hope this episode really resonates with you as well. So one of the biggest mistakes business owners make is sticking with systems that, quote, used to work, even when they're clearly stopped being effective. And I get it. When we first start out, we build simple processes, right? Because we have to. It's just us, or maybe we have a VA working with us, figuring things out as we go. And at first, those systems feel efficient. We don't waste time overcomplicating things. That's the right thing to do. But here's what happens. As our business grows and evolves, those once simple systems start actually slowing us down. And that's exactly what happened with my podcast system. My workflow was working perfectly until I added SEO and Pinterest into the mix. Suddenly, I had more moving parts, keyword research, optimizing show notes, repurposing content. And what had been a smooth, straightforward process, it became, let's say, a clunky, frustrating mess. And that's the reality for so many of us. We hit a growth stage where our old systems just aren't cutting it anymore. But instead of fixing the process, we decide to push through. We want to make it work, even if it costs more time, more energy, and ultimately more revenue. See, what most people don't realize is that outdated systems don't just slow us down, they actively hold us back. Think about this for a minute. Every extra step in your workflow is wasted time. Every miscommunication with your team leads to avoidable mistakes. And every time you put off streamlining, you're missing out on opportunities to grow. And the longer you wait, the bigger the problem gets. It's like a snowball. It keeps rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling, and before you know it, it's huge. Small inefficiencies, like spending an extra 10 minutes fixing a repetitive issue, might not seem like a big deal at the time. But let's look forward. Let's multiply that over months. Now we're talking about hours being lost to completely unnecessary busy work. I see this all the time with business owners who are too busy to fix their broken processes. They're overwhelmed, but instead of taking time to step back and simplify, they just keep working harder. And let me tell you, you can't outwork a bad system. So how does one know when it's time to change your systems? Well, for me, the turning point was when my workflow started creating more problems than it solved. At first, my podcast production process worked great. I had a straightforward system on a simple Google Sheet that kept everything on track. I would record, I'd hand off tasks to my VA, and everything got published like clockwork. It was simple, it was efficient. Until it wasn't. When I decided to focus more on SEO and content repurposing on Pinterest, suddenly my system couldn't keep up. What used to be a few streamlined steps turned into a bit of a tangled mess of extra tasks. And I found myself spending way too much time tracking down show notes. Were they there? Were they optimized? Making sure keywords were included in all the right places and trying to figure out which episode had actually been repurposed for Pinterest, for my email list, and my social media. So here's what happens when your systems aren't working anymore. Like me, you feel like you're constantly double-checking everything. There are too many manual steps in your process. And you start avoiding tasks because they just feel frustrating and messy. And for me, that last one was the biggest red flag. The second I started dreading the process, I knew something had to change. Because up until then, I enjoyed podcast outlining, podcast recording, and getting the episodes up, and there was no issue. But when I noticed that I was avoiding going to look at that spreadsheet, wanting to record, doing the outlines, then I knew there was a problem. When your systems are no longer efficient, that's when you realize something's broken. And for me, again, that biggest red flag was that I started dreading the process. I wasn't looking forward to podcasting anymore because the task felt overwhelming and not streamlined. All right, so what did I do? Well, I took a step back and I asked myself a few key questions to help me figure out what needed to change. So the first question here is, what parts of this system actually work well? Even though the system was feeling clunky, I knew there were parts of it that still worked. The initial steps, outlining, recording, and assigning tasks to my VA, those were all solid. The problem was everything I added afterward wasn't being tracked well. I needed to identify what was working and focus on making that stronger, not overcomplicating the whole system. The second question, where do things get stuck or take longer than they should? And this is a crucial question for you to ask. I had to pinpoint exactly where the friction was happening in my workflow. So for me, SEO tasks were adding extra steps that weren't streamlined. There was no clear method for knowing what SEO tasks had been completed, and I was wasting time rechecking things, which felt very inefficient. My VA was also spending unnecessary time chasing me for approval on things that should have been automated or clearly defined. This inefficiency wasn't just annoying, it was costing both of us time. And then the third question I had to ask was, what would make this easier, not harder? And this is the mindset shift I want you to focus on here. Systems are meant to simplify, not complicate. So after stepping back, I realized that I needed to take away the guesswork. What I needed wasn't another tool. It was a clear, repeatable process that everyone involved could follow without second guessing. So I looked at how to integrate SEO without adding unnecessary complexity. Instead of constantly tweaking, I realized that the key was in streamlining the steps. So creating SEO templates, defining clear checkpoints, and ensuring that my team knew exactly what to do without me having to oversee every step. Instead of adding more tools, I decided to use a tool that we already had in the business and we were already comfortable using, and that was our project management tool, Asana. We already use this system. Most of the tasks that I delegate to my VA are in there, and a lot of tasks for me are in there as well. So it was a no-brainer to just add the podcast workflow to Asana as well. Again, I don't need another tool. So I created a clear, repeatable checklist for every episode, including SEO steps, so my VA and I weren't constantly reinventing the wheel. And I also made sure that we had a simple way to track where each episode was in the process. So I wasn't second guessing what had been done and what hadn't. I could pop into Asana, take a quick look, and boom, I knew. And you know what happened when we implemented this? I got my time back. I wasn't chasing details anymore. My VA wasn't waiting for me to approve things. The mental load of, quote, managing the process all up in my head disappeared. And this is where so many business owners go wrong. They think better systems means adding more complexity, when really it's about removing friction. I hope you can see in my example. I used a tool we already had. I set up a template. I set up steps that my VA and I had to do for each and every episode. And now we just need to follow it like clockwork. So let's talk about you. If you're wondering whether your systems need an upgrade, here's a few signs that you can look for. Are you redoing work because tasks aren't clear or organized? Are you fixing mistakes constantly instead of focusing on those growth level tasks? Do you feel behind all the time, even though you're working nonstop? If any of those sound familiar, then it's a good sign that your current systems aren't working for you. They're actually working against you. But here's the good news. You don't have to overhaul everything at once. Pick one area of your business. Yes, listeners, I said one. One area of your business where things feel clunky. Maybe it's how you manage client work. Maybe it's your content creation process. Whatever it is, take a good look at what's not working and ask yourself, what would make this easier? Because again, the real goal of streamlining isn't just to, quote, be more organized. It's to create a business that runs smoother, faster, and with less effort from you. If today's episode hit home and you're realizing that your systems might be slowing you down, then let's fix that together. I'm opening up a few one-on-one coaching spots where we'll work directly, side by side, to identify the bottlenecks in your business, streamline your processes, and get you back more time without sacrificing results. If you're constantly redoing work, fixing mistakes, or just feeling stuck in the weeds, this is your chance to get personalized support that make real changes. I'll drop the link in the show notes, but go ahead and book a focus and freedom coaching call. And let's see if this is the right fit for you. And if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and hit that follow button. I've got more episodes coming up each and every week on working smarter, not harder. And I don't want you to miss out. Thanks for being with me today, and I'll see you next week in the next episode. Thank you for joining me on this episode of CEO Amplify. I appreciate you being part of our thriving community of ambitious business owners. If you enjoyed today's episode, I kindly ask you to share this podcast with a friend and take a hot minute to rate and leave a review. It would mean the world to me. Your feedback helps me reach more people and continue providing valuable content. Thanks so much for your support. Keep shining, and we'll catch you on the next episode.